Good morning. I had a speech prepared, but I don't like giving speeches, so I'm not going to do that. I'll just tell you something. I don't even know how to start this because something's happened to me in relation to this idea of diversity, and I don't know if I should start with that or let me toss up. Okay. I'll say first that, thank you, Denzin, I'm proud to be chancellor of this university because, as I said in one of my talks, I think I'm kind of a match for this school. My dad was a factory worker, and he didn't get further than primary school because he was educated in segregated Mississippi. And so he worked on a factory line for 40 years, raised us with our mom, and I had to work my way through university. I had to go through university at night, and eventually it took me a long time to get through because I had to pay all my fees. I am a damn good waiter if it ever comes to it. And I always tell my husband when we go into places, you know, always tip people because I lived off tips. That was my life. So I feel like in a way this is a good place for me to be. I didn't graduate from an Ivy League school, you know, or Oxbridge type school. And I graduated 40 years ago. And you know, you may think that it's bad now. Let me tell you, I'm not a lawyer today because when I went to my sort of a taster for law school, because in those days, especially if you were a black kid, you really wanted to go into the law because the civil rights movement, a lot of things were done through the law. The first day I went in, a bunch of us women were sitting in the front. We were ready to be lawyers. This is 1972, 73. The male teacher walks in, very distinguished lawyer. He looked at us in the front row and he said, "I don't think women should be lawyers." Let me just say this right up front, okay? I'm not going to lie to you. Now, that wasn't against the law then. So you had to sit there and think, am I going to stay in this man's class? Because he's not going to give me a chance. And so I salute all the women who stayed and became lawyers and stayed through it, because that's how bad it was. That's how bad it was in those days. You couldn't do anything in many ways as a woman. People told you to your face. 40 years ago, if you were a black person and you wanted to get into certain positions, they told you to your face, we don't hire black people. Now, people can feel like that now, but they can't tell you that because that's against the law. But you know, I came to this country and I tried to rent a place here when I first came at the end of the 60s to Earl's Court. And this woman told me, I don't rent to black people. And I'm coming from America where we're fighting the civil rights movement. I'm going, excuse me, because I thought I didn't hear that. She said, listen to me what I'm saying to you. I don't rent to black people. There's no law to do anything about that. So that's the way it was. Now, I'm not saying this makes it beautiful now, but let's put everything into context because I want to talk about going forward because there is a way to do that. The second thing I want to share with you is, first of all, number one, and you all are smart enough to know this, never tweet when you're angry. Never tweet when you're angry, okay? I broke the cardinal rule of tweeting when I was angry about something. And I live in Fitzrovia. I live in the West End of London, and the community is turning into a lot of what Central London's turning into like a place of luxury flats and everything. A lot of poor people, students are being cast out on the street. And I saw a piece. There was an interview with Greer Jones. I don't even know if you know who he is, but anyway, he is kind of famous. And he lives in a huge 7.5 million pound house around where I live, and he was saying he didn't want to pay the mansion tax if labor gets in. He was going to go and leave and go somewhere else. So I tweeted, being very angry, piss off. So I want you to know this, because this may come up. I said, piss off and go. That was a stupid thing for me to do, and mainly because I don't say piss off and go, and I didn't follow my first rule. But anyway, it's in the Daily Mail today. It's in the Telegraph, and you never know. It's kind of a backhanded compliment, because the Daily Mail doesn't write about you unless you affect Middle England. They don't care. So apparently I have some kind of leverage or something that Middle England, the angry people who read the Daily Mail, I must mean something. But they wouldn't do it. They did it because I'm black, so how dare I? I'm female, so how dare I? And I was born somewhere else, so how dare I? So I got to go back to my house. I was going to stay and listen to you guys, but I got to go back and deal with the trolls now, which are like really my faves, to be honest with you, because most of them don't know how to spell, and they're always eggs. So, but that's where we are right now. And please, if I say anything to those of you in the audience who are not white, please don't think this is about white people. Don't walk out of here thinking, oh, it's white people, because when I came out saying that Exhibit B, and I don't know if you all know about this, but that was a show which I was on my way to see, actually, and it was, I guess it was made by a white South African artist, and he was making something about slavery, and he had actual black, people in it. I saw the images. I was invited to see it. I wanted to go see it. And black activists mainly, and I don't blame them at all, but they were angry about this. And they demonstrated, and the Barbican, frankly, caved in and got nervous and closed the show. Well, the stuff that I got, the xenophobic and kind of racialist stuff I got, came from black people, which was really shocking. So it's not about color, it's about the time we are in. We are in a time right now where we are experiencing the largest movement of human beings in Europe since World War II. We're at a time right now where the demographic shift is moving east and it's moving south, and this is inexorable. This will not stop. We are in a time now where the human replacement rate, which is the other name for the average age of this country, has slowed down. The average age of this country is 41.4, but not among so-called ethnic minorities. It's young. That's what's growing. And so there is pressure. And we are a people, we are a species who are clannish. We like our so-called own. We like our tribe, and people feel the pressure that's going on right now, and they're being made to feel it. But what I want to say to all of you is that the word diversity is something I actually don't like. I understand what it means. I think it is necessary because it cuts through a lot of conversation. But I think it's old. I think it's old-fashioned. If you look at the word diversity in the dictionary, which I did yesterday, it entered the parlance in about 1992, which means that it reached a critical mass probably about 1986. When I was your age, a lot of you, I was in the street marching for civil rights, women's rights, rights for disabled people, and then eventually what begins to happen when those kind of things, when that kind of mass movement happens, it starts to trickle down this sort of body politic, and then they come up with a word for it. So that word entered the jargon in 92, which is probably the look of a lot of you when you were little kids, or maybe you weren't even born. So it's kind of redundant in a way. I'm not saying don't use it, but my question to you is, when you use diversity, what are you diverse from? That's the question we need to ask. What are you diverse from? What is it? Because in there lies a way of looking at the situation anew. We have to do that. Because if we continue to use a lot of the parameters which policymakers use, which educationalists use, which is important, but it isn't the reality. All of you, if you are under 40, live in a digital, diverse, very fast-moving world, which has no definition of who you are yet. You're living a life that I didn't live at your age. You're living an existence where the people who are making policy don't live. And somewhere today, please find a space where you can talk about the way you are now. If in London, for instance, they say that half of people under 6 years old have one non-white parent. That's the reality. Now, I call myself black, and I know what that means. But what do you call a kid who are they if they have one black parent who say might identify with me and their other parent isn't? Who are they? You can't put them in a box. These people live another life. And that's what we got to talk about. If you are a disabled person, maybe you need to talk about how you are being disabled. You live inside yourself. I live inside myself. Inside myself, I'm not a black woman. I'm me. When I come out the door, that's when I become a black woman. When I try, I'm not a disabled person, but if you are a person who they call disabled, you need to look at how the environment is disabling you. That's what it's about. You can function. You are a human being. You can do what you need to do, but if they don't make the environment for you, you are disabled. And I'm saying that's the way we need to look. If you are a young white male, you need to look at the fact that your stuff is at the bottom of the league table. Nobody's talking about you. They're making an assumption about you. They're putting you in a box. There are people out there who are marching down streets saying they're talking for you. Are they? Are they? That's a talk that needs to be had. If you're a woman and you talk about being, we're being discriminated against, actually, we're the majority in the world, so how is that possible? That needs to be looked at too. So I'm saying we need to, in this diversity, ask who are we diverse from? And secondly, how do we make the new tools? This is a university. This is a very, very diverse university. How do we become a place where we talk about the 21st century? We talk about now. Yes, we must talk about history. Yes, we must talk about what's going on. But how do you talk about now? That's what we need to do. I don't want you being in your 20s talking about stuff that I talked about in my 20s. Let old people's stuff stay over there. You need to talk about now. Come up with some new language. Come out of here with some new terms. Give the world something different. Because there are people out here who can't get in here, who need to hear new stuff that reflects them. One of the things that really I find shocking, I've lived here since 1986, is the way that people of African descent, how their voice has been smashed out in this country, has been mashed down and just vanished. And that's just one example of what's going on. And, there's a lot of reasons for that. But at the same time, we need to look at some of the internal stuff that's going on that actually doesn't reflect you, doesn't reflect your identity. Now, if you voluntarily put yourself in a box in order to have a dialogue with somebody, that's on you. But that's not what it is. That's not what it is. And I urge you, within all of these powerful and important speeches you're going to have today, and debates, Let's look at the way it is for you now. Look at your own life. Look at your own aspirations. Look at your own possibilities, because we can't move forward unless you do that. Otherwise, you're going to be stuck talking about old stuff. And sometimes reality, things become reality because we talk it into reality. If we're talking about stuff, sometimes it becomes that thing because we talk about it. Look at the way it is. Look at your own parents, your own people, and see how you've come from this point to here. And if you talk to people who are old enough, who have been involved in this stuff, they'll tell you, oh, you think this is bad? And I don't want to say that to denigrate what's going on. But we have, I'm telling you, it's a lot different than it used to be. Reflect the change. Define change. Define movement. Define what's shifted. Define who you are. And then you tell policymakers, you tell this university, you tell each other, this is who I am. Now, let's find some terms for that. And the other thing I want to say too is all of you reflect the world as it is. These politicians, all that stuff out there, that's a construct. You people are what it is. You people have already won, and you are going to win because it is inevitable that you do. But it depends on how much time you're going to let that happen. If you're going to be stuck back in about old stuff, you'll take a long time to make that happen. And there are a lot of people who are invested in you doing just that. For example, I was on the BBC last night talking about the papers, and there's a study that came out of UCL yesterday, that said, and I sort of quote, EU immigrants, or migrants, because they're not immigrants, they're migrants, have actually contributed more to the society than they've taken out. They pay more tax than they get benefits. They also happen to be better educated, and they also are younger. Now that was the report. That's black and white. What did some papers do? They put on top people who are coming from outside the EU and how much money they're taking from the society, blah, blah, blah. And then they took the Labor Party and what they've been doing for 17 years. And then if you could get past that gatekeeper, you then got into the meat of it, which is about a good news story about being from the EU. That's what it is. But let me tell you something. This is a blip. This is a moment. You guys are going to live a long time. And you're going to get old enough to be as old as I am, and you're going to remember what I said. This is a blip. So let's talk about, again, let's talk about the future. Let's talk about what it is now. But let's talk about what it is becoming, because you are what it's becoming. All of you, every last one of you in this room is the future of this country and of the world. And this university is a model of the future. Trust me. That's all I got to say. Thank you.